The reason that I am here is because fascism does not own this university. Because there are students who do want to hear differing views, who don't want to be told that they can only hear one view, who don't believe that the First Amendment should die under the jackboots and Birkenstocks of a bunch of anarchist communist pieces of garbage. Thanks to Antifa and the supposed anti-fascist brigade for exposing what the radical left truly is, all of America is watching because you guys are so stupid. It's horrifying, I am grateful, and you can all go to hell, you pathetic, lying, stupid jackasses.
That's a fired-up Ben Shapiro this week, speaking at UC Berkeley, where the school that offered counseling to students and faculty who were offended by Shapiro's words also took extraordinary steps to keep Antifa protesters out, including beefing up its police presence, installing concrete barriers, and okaying cops to use pepper spray. Measures costing the school, you ready? $600,000. But while America is preoccupied with Antifa thugs running amok on college campuses, our friends in the UK are facing new, real terror threats after a homemade bomb exploded on a subway car at the height of rush hour in London. Ben Shapiro is editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com and host of The Ben Shapiro Show. He joins me now. So, Ben, they spent $600,000 to prevent violence at your speech. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure whether to be satisfied or insulted. I guess they're a bunch of Keynesian leftists. So from that perspective, I just created an enormous number of infrastructure jobs. But it really has nothing to do with me. It has to do with Antifa, obviously. There were businesses that boarded up early. I know that the Bank of America actually boarded up its own ATMs because they were afraid Antifa was going to go crazy and break them. They did what they were supposed to do, the authorities. And that's really the key here, is that for the first time in a year, the legal authorities said to the cops, do what you need to do, arrest people who show up with masks, arrest people who show up with weapons ready to do harm. And the police were staffed up. I mean, hundreds of police officers ringing the place. It was pretty obvious to Antifa that if they started anything, they were going to get their skulls crushed.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
they decided better of that.
They finally woke up because they've been allowing these people to run wild for the last year and a half. It looks like overwhelming force and preventative action is the way to go. So what was the message of your speech, and was it handled well by the university? Did the students boo you? Were you hissed? Were you called names? What was it like?
So, I mean, normally I don't even care if I'm booed or hissed or anything. That's fine. And people who protest, that's fine, too. I may think you're wrong. I may think you're dumb, but that's your right. The one thing that the university did wrong, I think they did the security right, but the one thing they did wrong was with regard to the allowing people into the crowd itself. They blocked off 1,000 seats and wouldn't let anybody up into the balcony because they suggested that Antifa might go up there and throw objects down onto the students below.
Oh, my God.
They made everybody who picked up an ID who picked up a ticket do so with ID, which, you know, in other contexts is racist, but in this context is totally fine.
Yeah, right. You don't need an ID to vote, but you have to show one when you see Shapiro.
That's exactly right. And then there were a bunch of leftists who had bought tickets so that they wouldn't come, or who had reserved tickets, they wouldn't come. So we had all of these standby tickets available, and we had a line of like 200 people outside who wanted to come in. And instead of allowing that to happen, the authorities just grabbed the tickets and said nobody else gets in.
Can I just explain to the audience who you are? Because a lot of these people don't understand. You know, Ben Shapiro he's not a provocateur. He's not some flamethrower. You're considered, I guess, a mainstream conservative intellectual, kind of a polemicist sometimes, but you're not one of these guys that, you know, goes out there and is mean-spirited and just, you know, throws haymakers at people to be mean.
No, that's not my goal. My goal is to go out there and say things that I think are true, and if it makes you angry, then that's really your problem. But I'm not going out there to say deliberately provocative things just for the sake of saying deliberately provocative things.
Well, let me show something.
A weird example.
Let me show you an example of one of your exchanges with one of these students about abortion. Let's see what it was.
Why exactly do you think a first trimester fetus has moral value?
Okay, so a first trimester fetus has moral value because whether you consider it a potential human life or a full-on human life, it has more value than just a cluster of cells. If left to its natural processes, it will grow into a baby. So the real question is, where do you draw the line? So you're going to draw the line at the heartbeat? Because it's very hard to draw the line at the heartbeat. There are people who are adults who are alive because of a pacemaker. They need some sort of outside force generating their heartbeat. Okay, are you going to do it based on brain function? Okay, well, what about people who are in a coma? Should we just kill them? Right? The problem is anytime you draw any line other than the inception of the child, you end up drawing a false line that can also be applied to people who are adults. So either human life has intrinsic value or it doesn't. I think we both agree that adult human life has intrinsic value. Can we start from that premise?
I believe that sentience is what give something moral value, not necessarily being a human alone.
Okay,
because,
so when you're asleep, can I stab you?
I'm still considered sentient when I'm asleep.
Okay, if you are in a coma from which you may awake, can I stab you?
Well, then, no, I guess not. I mean, like,
I'm glad you answered that, because I have no interest in actually murdering you.
I mean, I think that's exactly what Berkeley needs. Here's my theory on this. You tell me if I have this accurate. I feel like these liberal campuses view conservative speakers as germs, and they don't want any exposure to conservative thought. So, you know, the germaphobes, they sanitize everything around the house, and they don't expose themselves to anything. They might get the sniffles. So then when they're exposed to the smallest little germ, all hell breaks loose. They get sick, they riot, they burn things. So they're living in this cocoon, and they just can't handle conservatism because they've never been exposed to it. And that is exactly what you did. I thought that was a healthy, normal dialogue.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I think that your analysis, especially with regard to the students, is exactly right. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about the event is that there were a bunch of people on the left who showed up and asked questions. I always thank people when they're from the left and they show up to ask questions. It was a really cordial dialogue, and that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
But outside, you had people who were literally chanting, "Speech is violence." Okay, speech is not violence. That's the whole point here. Like, no one died because I spoke last night. It's totally insane.
I want to show the audience, I think we have this. There's a poster about you that says fascist intellectual thuggery in the service of the Trump-Pence fascist regime. Wow. I mean, I didn't even know you were that big of a Trump supporter to begin with, but do they even know what fascist is? And I only have a few seconds left, so go ahead.
No, I mean, if they knew what fascist was, then they would have been a little bit more, I think, doubtful about going into the middle of the plaza and shouting about President Trump. If you were really a fascist, then, you know, Big Orange Hitler would have shown up and shut him down. But that obviously didn't happen because we don't live in a fascist country, and President Trump is not a fascist president. All
right, well, listen, at the end of the month, they have Bannon, Coulter, and Milo speaking at Berkeley, so they're going to have to hire a lot of therapists. Ben, always a pleasure.
Thanks so much.